topic du jour, and this has been a topic that if you have been on social media over the last 72 hours, you will have had a lot of. Floyd Schofield, who is a undefeated prospect, 22 years old, top ranked in the 135-pound division, at least by one of the sanctioning bodies. He has been pushing hard for a fight against Shakur Stevenson. Both Schofield and his father, who has been more vocal and runs his social media channels, has been out there pushing for that fight. Shakur has engaged back. Oscar De La Hoya has weighed in. We'll get to that in a moment. Sergio, we discussed possible fights for Shakur Stevenson earlier in the week. We talked about Raymond Morataya, who is a worthy challenger. We talked about Joe Cordina, a former title holder at 130. We didn't mention Floyd Schofield. So what do you think of Floyd Schofield, Shakur Stevenson fight for February?
We didn't mention Floyd Schofield because he's just too young and too fresh. He's too green, ambitious, strong, talented, fun to watch. He's carrying the main event position well. I mean, he's starting to become popular and put people in arenas. Everything's great. Why are you messing with your pride now? Floyd Schofield had successful sparring sessions with Shakur Stevenson, according to him. That's what Team Schofield says. That's great, man. But sparring and the professional level, especially on the championship level, against a multi-division champion in Shakur and Olympic silver silver medalist in Shakur, it's just too much. I just think he should check his pride at the door, at the gym door, and leave the sparring sessions and those stories of glory in sparring where they belong, in the gym. That's what happens whenever you give these young bucks an opportunity at the champ in sparring. It happens all the time. It happened with me. They take those glory sparring sessions and they spread them around everywhere. That's the reason, and it only got worse with social media. At least with me, social media was antique, if I didn't exist. But nowadays, you get a clip, you post it, it goes viral, all the fans and all the critics talk about it, and they start saying, oh, he can beat him. He had a great day in sparring. Sparring is where you prepare for things that you never tried. It's where you're coming into camp out of shape. You're not in your best shape. You're a lot of things can go wrong in one day, maybe even 2 days of sparring, but it's not the real thing. So look, just to put a button in this, Chris Mannix, I think it's too early for Floyd Schofield to be talking about a guy like Shakur. Shakur's a beast. He should be pointing and targeting champions. Schofield should be targeting former champions.
Yeah, I was going to drill down on the sparring part of it because you're right. The confidence that Floyd and his father are brimming with, it all comes from these sparring sessions that Floyd had with Shakur Stevenson, that he had with Devin Haney. And I agree with you. I think they're vastly overrating the significance of it. I mean, you said it. I've heard, a great fighter like Andre Ward say it in the past, like, you're not supposed to go into sparring looking to put on a dominant performance. You're supposed to go into sparring working on stuff, right? Like, so if you have a game plan for, say, like a Vernon Forrest or a Daniel Jacobs or whatever, like you're trying to work on things that are going to beat them. Similarly, like, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the sparring partners you're bringing in are supposed to be helping you in that respect. Like, they're supposed to be emulating the fighters that you're going to face. I mean, we talk about this in fighter meetings all the time. Like, who'd you get for sparring? Were they able to reasonably, facsimilate the opponent you got in front of you? Like, it's not a fight. It's not. So you're basing your ability to succeed against a championship level fighter like Shakur Stevenson on a couple dozen rounds of sparring or less against him. To me, that's really foolish, or a foolish approach to take.
Did you say facsimile? Leave that
facsimile
terminology for the office, Chris Mannix. No,
reasonable.
You try to imitate. You try to impersonate. You try to do what your opponent's going to do. That's what you pay your sparring partners for. But yeah, and you do that with word of mouth. Hey, do you know a guy that spars like so-and-so? Do you know a guy with power? Do you know a tall guy? Do you know a short guy that's stocky? It's word of mouth. And there's a network in sparring where you can tell, ask one coach, that coach asks two coach, and it just spreads out. Next thing you know, you have the perfect sparring partner. And once you have one sparring partner, then you got to get a younger guy just to give you work, just to give you punches, and then you trade them around. Then if you're really in shape, once you start getting into shape, because you don't want the first guy to take it all of you, the second guy beats you up. Then you go through three sparring partners, and then you alternate them. There's there's bound to be a point in those rounds where you have one bad round and a new kid that's ambitious and young had one good moment against you, and then that's going to be your tale of glory for the next couple of years. That's what happens when a professional champion on the championship level is preparing for a fight. We give these kids opportunities to come at the champ. Come at me as hard as you can. I used to pay my sparring partners extra if they had good rounds against me. Every good round they had, I paid them extra. I would want them to try to take my head off. They never did, but I paid them to. Sometimes they had good sparring sessions, and guess what? I heard those glory tales. Oh, I did good against Sergio Mora. Man, when I would hear those rumblings, I would call them back when I was in shape and beat the shit out of them. That's what you do, and then teach them a lesson. That way they don't go and spread those rumors. Floyd Schofield needs to understand that in this game, it's going to be about his reputation, because if he's spreading rumors, things like that, people aren't going to trust him in the camp and gym anymore. That's one. And two, relax, man. You're filling out the main event nicely. You're putting up entertaining fights, but you've also looked vulnerable in those fights. So now check that ego and realize you have a lot to learn and a lot to gain out of just being patient.
Yeah, I mentioned Oscar De La Hoya, and on Thursday he was on social media, effectively saying the same things that we are. That it's too soon. Floyd Schofield is 22. He's only had one 12-round fight. That was his last fight against Rene Guiron. Won that fight by convincing decision, but didn't look dominant in it. In fact, Oscar graded that performance a C. I think Floyd himself, after the fight, said C, C+. I thought it was right in that range as well. He got hurt in that fight, Sergio, by Guiron. And if you're getting hurt by guys on the level of Rene Guiron, no disrespect to him, you're not ready for a Shakur Stevenson. You mentioned at the top, he should be fighting former champions. That is the next step in his development. Guys that have held a belt for X number of months or years, who are a little bit older, who've got some experience, who can show him some of the tricks that he's likely to see when he takes his game to the next level. You and I are both fans of Floyd Schofield. We think there's a lot of potential for him to get to that superstar level. And if he has the talent to back up all the talk, he could be a big name in boxing very quickly, but it's way too soon. It is way too soon. And if I'm Oscar De La Hoya, I'm Eric Gomez, I am standing in front of this particular fight, because while I don't think this is a fight that Floyd could get hurt in, I think it's a fight he could get embarrassed in, right? I think Shakur is levels above him right now. And maybe though that gap closes in the next couple of years, maybe we're talking about Schofield against Shakur in a big fight in 2026. But right now, to me, it's a mismatch. And again, I respect young fighters for wanting that smoke. I respect young fighters for wanting to go for those big fights. But this to me is a bridge too far. And if I'm De La Hoya, I'm holding my ground and say, look, we're going to get you 2 or 3 fights in 2025, and maybe start of 2026, when you get those rounds under your belt, when you get that experience under your belt, maybe then we'll start talking about you and Shakur Stevenson.
Yeah, no, you said it right. And the thing, Mannix, is that you want young fighters to talk like this. You want them to think they can beat everybody. You want them to have that way of thinking. You don't want them to be too careful and start thinking like a matchmaker and maneuvering their way to the top. No, you want to be the best. You want to fight the best. That's what you want to have in them as far as what they feel. But you also got to mold that. It takes a team, man. It takes a father. It takes a trainer's voice. It takes a manager. It takes a matchmaker. It takes a promoter. It takes a lot of people to get in this guy's ear and give him their piece of advice, right? Everyone says, hey, what's a rush? You choose the right words for you won't offend them, because fighters are all their egos are small. All right, I'm just telling you right now. We have sensitive egos, man. Don't be talking about what we can't do, because we spent our entire life, proving people wrong. So why not one more time? But this time, when it comes to your career, when it comes to you got to this point, this level of success, now it's time to tread lightly, man. I know it sounds the opposite of what you've been doing your entire life. And Floyd Schofield has an incredible story from, being homeless and him and his father. So who the fuck can tell him, no, not yet, after everything he's come faced and came back from. But you only have one career, and one bad loss can set you back. Why the hell are you going for calling out one of the trickiest undefeated, multi-division Olympic medalist in Shakur? It's suicide. It's career suicide to be doing that. You climb the ranks, you put some money in your pocket, you spread your name around, and that's what you got to do. And his father and trainer and everyone around him should tell him that and urge him to do that as well.
Yeah, it's like I said, we're not talking about never doing this. We're talking about getting 2 or 3 fights in 2025 and then jumping into it when he's 23 years old and still very young.
Yeah, 23.
Still very, very young in this boxing game. And look, it's not like we're not just saying this that he needs to get more experience because just getting experience matters. Of course it does. But we've called this fight. There are things he's got to clean up. Like he stopped lunging quite as much in his last fight, but that's something that's been a problem for him. And I think he's got to learn and continue to learn what to do when you've got an opponent in front of you that can't be knocked out. And I'm sure he learned some valuable lessons in that last fight against Giron, but he was a little too over-aggressive in those final couple of rounds. I mean, how many rounds, Sergio, did he go back into the corner and have his father and Ronnie Shields tell him he's not doing it right? So there's definitely things he's got to get better at before he's ready to take the jump to that next level.